because you had Black and Hispanic employees that were helping the Korean owners.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That were, to defend, the shop, because when you look at it, that's their source of employment and source of income, right? So if that place burns down, then what are they going to do? How are they going to pay their bills?
Yeah.
And you had, what's not talked about, you had Latino communities that were defending Korean shopkeepers because they're saying, like, listen, my mom buys the milk and tortillas over there, so I don't want that place to burn down, right?
Yeah, burning communities.
Right.
I think it's important to add some context real quick. Please jump right into this. This was the 92 riots after Rodney King. Police completely stood down. Was it 4 days? 60 people were murdered. It was this absolute chaos. They were burning towns down. They were working their way up, and they were working their way towards Koreatown.
Right.
And they got to Koreatown. I believe did it start off with initial standoff at a store, I think I was reading, or something?
It started off in South LA, South Central. So you had these pockets of Korean businesses that were isolated from the main Korean community that were
so it was all over.
Burned. Right. And it was crazy because they were actually shooting at firefighters at that time, too. So the firefighters needed police escort to go in there and put out the fires.
So crazy.
And then from then, it started moving up north towards Koreatown proper. And that's when there was a call that went out from the Korean broadcasting station in Korean asking for help from the community. And when that happened, that's when everybody, anybody who was willing to volunteer went down on Friday and just basically started, manning the rooftops. Guys like me were actually out there in cars. We're driving through neighborhoods looking for guys as well. So we didn't know how long this was going to go for. I thought it was going to go for perhaps maybe another week or so. And
something worth noting is this is the most recent citizen armed militia in American history too. This is why the Second Amendment community venerates this story so much.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's such a big story because, like, in 2020, we all saw the police that stood down. I was in LA at the time. I was too young to remember that. But I was in San Francisco during this, and the police just stood down. I didn't even have a gun at the time. Right. I went to my friend's house and was like, I need a gun right now. I don't care if it's registered. I'm bringing a gun on me. This is like the police have stood down.
Right.
So we see how the police abandoned me. So it shows you guys took together and defended your property.
Yeah, and that was a sore spot for me for many years. But then as I got older and, became more of an adult, I see it from the standpoint of these guys are employees, right? So they want to go home to their families, right? And if you're out there, by yourself with, let's say, your partner, you're pretty much a target. And I think the 2020 BLM Antifa riots, illustrated that perfectly, where you had rioters basically overturning police cars, going after cops, right? So I don't blame cops for not wanting to be in that area.
I do. They sign up. They sign up to do that for their job, to put it in risk. You wouldn't put your life.
I was just going to ask you, what are the modern parallels you see with the George Floyd riots? Because I was in New York when the Floyd riots were happening,
right?
And my studio was actually nearby. It was like 3 blocks away from some of the biggest chaos, and it was like hell. It was absolute hell. Property damage across the board, just like people screaming. It's very violent, and like, what's going to stop this?
Right. The reason why I don't blame cops is because if you hang out with law enforcement long enough, these guys talk about basically overtime pay, their pension. I mean, it's a job, right? It's a job. It's not like, they want to make a difference. Maybe some of them do.
But if you'd be a cop, maybe you should. That's kind of my problem. I have a lot of friends that are cops. I don't want to hate on them too hard. And a lot of times they're giving orders to stand down too.
Yeah.
So they're giving stand down orders. But also you are signing up for a job where you're supposed to put your life on the line.
Yeah, it's easier said than done. In my experience.
Once you get older, when you get families, when you're young,
exactly.
It's easy. But
you're saying that's what was happening in LA. They're like, no, I see.
Right.
Well, I will say I do appreciate even in your cadence that there's a lot of nuance in how you're speaking, and I can tell that you're dispelling a lot of just the typical interpreted mythology of the rooftop Koreans. Like you already said things that probably most people wouldn't have assumed.
Yeah, I didn't know it was multiple groups.
And that's actually refreshing that there's other people that were stepping up to protect the community.
Yeah, I think that's something that needs to be said. In LA, to a certain extent, I mean, we have our relationship and ties with different ethnic groups and people because of neighborhoods, because of our background, because of who we grew up with. Mainly like my 2 closest friends. One's Filipino, the other guy's Dutch Indonesian, right? And these guys I've known since I was like 15. Right?
Yeah.
So LA truly is a mix, and I got Latino friends as well. That I train with. So it's not just like, hey, it's just the Koreans, but I want to kind of
other groups are helping.
Yeah, I want to give credit to those guys too, because those guys, I mean, when I went out there, it was to basically help my friend's older brother. They had a stereo shop on Hoover, and when we got there on Friday morning, we had the Black and Latino guys that were the employees were moving equipment and inventory out from the large windows.
That's a great point you're pointing out.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, the black and Latinos were looting, but they were also helping.
Yeah.
That's why it's always important to realize the world's complex.
Human nature.
It's not
Exactly.
black and white.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the thing is also is that a lot of the, when it comes to the Second Amendment, there was a lot of Korean gun shop owners that gave away firearms during that week. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
Like
They were-
permanently, they gave people guns.
No, well, they said, listen,
Bring 'em
it's
back.
crazy out there. So take this. Here's a box of shells, right? Cartridges. And
Crazy.
yeah, just take this.
So
and then
crazy.
when
Can
it-
you
when
imagine
it-
that today?
Yeah. When it dies down, just bring it back. Use the honor
Most of them
system.
probably did, 'cause
yeah, they
they're
did.
pretty
Everyone did.
honest, yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Wow.
This was someone said this being organized over the radio. Was the radio telling people to come and get guns? And
No, the radio's like, it was just so general. It's just like, we need help. I didn't even know about the broadcast until, the morning I was leaving. I ran into my dad, and my dad was packing too. He had a 38 special that he was, we're both leaving at the same time. And I don't know, I think most Koreans my age didn't have the closest relationship with their fathers. It was very kind of utilitarian and authoritarian, because I think they have a military background, that's
Yeah.
why. But we didn't exchange any words that morning. I mean, we just gave each other a look, and he went to his group and I went to my group, But yeah, a lot of them weren't, gun owners at that time. They became,
gun owners after
well,
that.
they rented guns, right? Sort of
Yeah.
for that week. They were given guns for that week, and then the following, day.
Did they actually return them, or did they do the Jewish thing and say, now you owe me the interest? Or
Oh yeah, it's the honor system, right? So
That's so cool. They gave
yeah.
out guns, and most of them got returned. That's,
yeah, actually, I think all of them got returned.
Wow.
Because it's based on an honor system.
yeah, and someone
Right.
honorable enough to go defend, their
Right.
their land, and it just shows you how important it is to be able to defend yourself. That the police and government
Yeah.
anytime could stand down and let us. That I really woke up to that in 2020. Like, well, these guys could. That's when I started getting into guns. They could. I mean, I could fight, but it's different when guys have guns.
Right.
You need to be able to protect your family, your property, your people.
Yeah, and even as recent as the Palisade fires, the LA fires right now that just occurred in maybe about a month ago.
Yeah.
Now, that's another good example.
Yeah, well, let's get to that later. I think there's loot in there too, but it's
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you about this. So, because obviously you're talking about there's a difference with guns. It's a different level of kinetic energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's something where it's a more dangerous time, therefore that's why there's more courageous men who stood up? Because when I saw the George Floyd riots, because I was there, I just saw cowardice across the board. I didn't see anyone doing anything, and they were gallivanting around and causing chaos, and nobody stood up.
I don't know. That's a pretty complex question because I think the cowardice comes from being, afraid to be labeled a racist, right? I think that's the biggest thing, and that's what probably keeps a lot of people from wanting to get involved because of that label.
They're so scared to be called a racist.
Yeah,
not a racist.
and I
It's
think
so
it's
crazy
been
how far that
overdone and
works.
overused.
So overused.
Yeah.
Pushback. People are pushing back finally.
I'm glad. I think it's high time,
Well,
because we've been 8 years of just total bullshit.
Yeah, just getting lied to, pushed around.
Yeah.
The whites constantly attacked, but there's never really been much of a problem between the Asians and whites. The media tries driving it and pretending like there is, but it's not actually there.
Because I remember when I dealt with that in New York, and then 8 months go by, something like that. Stop Asian Hate happens in New York, right? And all over the television it says blacks targeting and assaulting Asians, specifically based on race, is white supremacy.
I can't.
I remember that. I was
they
like,
actually pushed that. That was
yeah. It was
they
crazy
tried.
because the actual footage is like that guy's a black guy who just hit him.
Yeah, that was
And
really
it's
big.
like what are we gonna do to end this white supremacy? That was actually what CNN had.
Yeah, they said
But
black
it's
people were
crazy.
attacking Asians because of white supremacy. They literally
Yeah.
pushed that, and I heard people repeat it like just parrots. Just a girl trying to tell them that like you're a moron. They're not doing it.
It's a divide and conquer thing, man. That's really what it is.
Yeah, and they stopped pushing the Asian hate thing as soon as they realized it was all black people. And that went away.
Well, Larry Elder. Yeah, they labeled him a white supremacist.
They didn't even say black.
They called him a black white supremacist. That's
And brother, I'm sure you had quite a bit of that being this base Korean guy, especially on the early end. People probably called you like a Uncle Chang, all this kind of stuff.
Oh, that's a new one. I've never heard of
No,
that.
no, but whatever it is. Yeah, okay, Twinkie, whatever it
No,
is, it's crazy.
They called me a white supremacist too.
Yeah, I get called that when I'm like, nah, I come from like a totally Korean, I don't know. It's just these stupid labels to
And
silence you. Yeah.
I just want to say this. It's like you should never be ashamed of your background, where you came
proud
from,
of it.
your culture.
Everyone should-
if you're
everyone should be proud
white
of it.
European, dude, be proud of
Exactly.
that. There's nothing wrong with
You
that.
should be proud of being
right?
Korean. Like everyone should be proud of who
Right.
they are.
But here's
told 'em evil
here's the
in every way.
problem. Here's the problem, gentlemen. I'm gonna hate to break this kumbaya thing. It's one thing to be proud of your heritage. What if you feel entitled to other people's land and you want separation of those people